as much as they're giving praise to the assistant to the offensive line coach in New England, Cole Popovich, he was also the assistant to the assistant of the offensive line coach here. But they decided he was the right man for the job. So the real question is, do we have unending trust in DeMeco Ryans to get this hire right? The Texans are ranked the 7th best roster in all of football by PFF. Some of the teams ahead of them, as you might imagine, are the teams they're looking up at and are trying to catch in the AFC. But the Eagles are number 1. They love that roster, and why not? They did win a Super Bowl. And they think Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown will be just fine at safety now that the Texans have Gardner Johnson. Ravens 2, Lions 3. Like I said, the rosters that you might expect. The Chiefs are ahead of them, and I'm not sure about that one. I mean, I'm not going based off the rankings, but as far as their PFF rankings for each individual player. But if they think the Chiefs are 4, I think I would only give them the edge because I like their offensive line more than the Texans. The Texans' offensive line is the big question. Maybe some issues at linebacker. We'll hear from Azeez Ashir in this segment as well. But so they're 7th, which is fine. Not disrespected, I think. A team who, if things come together, can go out there and do big things. They also call the offensive line their biggest weakness, say their biggest strength is pass defense. The X factor is Cam Robinson. And as of the first OTA, Cam Robinson is their starting left tackle. Blake Fisher is right guard, and I believe Titus Howard is playing right guard for them. And that was just the media viewing portion. Who knows what actually is going on, because DeMeco Ryans, and rightfully so, wasn't going to say anything as real as it was just the first day. So if we take this at face value, that they do have the 7th best roster in the league and right around like 3rd or 4th in the AFC. So a real contender, if you just go by that, to do big things. Do we believe their offensive coaching staff is capable of elevating, or at a minimum not being a detriment to what they want to do? Because if you go back to last year, all of the commentary throughout the year and then at the end of the year was the offensive line coach, the OC, were holding this team back. Of course, injuries play a part, but they play a part for every team. And now some get hurt more than others, but the Texans lost a couple receivers. But for the most part, they were okay in the other spots on their team, particularly on offense. Yes, there were some, I think, Kenyon Green missed time, but everyone's like, yes, Kenyon Green's missing time, because they didn't feel like the Texans would do it themselves, and he got hurt, and then they brought him back, and then he got hurt again. But they were relatively healthy. But yes, losing Tank late and Stephon Diggs early were big factors. So lack of experience calling plays, but that can be said by most OCs when they first get a job. There's not a lot of guys who were calling plays and then went and then got another job calling plays. If that does happen, that means you've been fired. Because generally, you become a head coach if you're a successful OC. So I won't hold that against Nick Caley. I just work from a position of I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be good. I can't assume anything. And Cole Popovich is the same way. So I think the Texans, beyond offensive line, is their biggest question mark, is their new offensive brain trust. Someone who is not that concerned about it is Chris Sims. And you can also throw in a McCourty as well. They were doing a podcast, as I just hit my own microphone. Hopefully they didn't do that in the sound we're about to play. And they are very complimentary of Cole Popovich, the new Texans O-line coach. And they discuss how things will be different from 2025 and 2024.
I think they're going to fix some of those offensive line pass protection issues. I would have a hard time thinking, between Nick Caley, Caserio being there, a lot of New England people there.
Cole Popovich was a guy that was in New England who came in.
Right.
So Dante Scarnecchia, known around the NFL as one of the
greatest O-line coaches ever.
Cole Popovich came in and was under Scar. So, He was supposed to take over New England. The whole COVID vaccine stuff happened. Right. He was let go in New England. He bounced around D2, D3 for a year, then ended up in Houston as an assistant. He now, who was with Nick Caley, will take over. That offensive line will be built in a way that how Scar would build it.
Exactly.
Built off protection first, play second.
Exactly.
Like, we're not going to have a play we love and say, but
we can't protect it.
You're not
That's what they did last year. We go, that was a cool play, but he's sacked for an 8-yard loss. Who gives if it was cool? And that's, I think that he's saying what I'm saying. They're going to get Stroud like Brady and be like, hey, 54's the mic, and if something changes, check. No, check that. Leo, 72's the mic over here, whatever. They're going to make him in control of it. There was issues there, and my bottom line point I was getting to is I think people are sleeping on the Texans. The Texans are a Super Bowl team. The Texans could go to the Super Bowl this year for the first time in franchise history.
Wow. So high praise from Chris Sims. Now, it is Chris Sims. So do we value his opinion because he was positive? Or, oh, by the way, I said Jason McCourty. It's Devin McCourty, the other twin.
It was a coin flip.
Truly was. I just got that one wrong. Devin McCourty on NBC Sports. Do we value Chris Sims' opinion because he's positive, or do we acknowledge that we have decided he says a lot of things with no real logic behind them, and we sometimes assume he's doing it for the clicks? So do we devalue this opinion? How do we figure out if this one is real and the other ones are just for clicks? I mean, he is talking about the Texans. I'm not sure how many clicks you get by big up in the Texans, but Texans Reddit will pick it up, so maybe they'll flock to your podcast because you gave them some praise. I'm going to push back a little. I don't dislike the roster. I just have too many questions about an important part of that roster and then the coaching staff on offense. So as much as they're giving praise to the assistant to the offensive line coach in New England, Cole Popovich, he was also the assistant to the assistant of the offensive line coach here. But they decided he was the right man for the job. So the real question is, do we have unending trust in DeMeco Ryans to get this hire right? And I would say I never have unending trust in anyone, so the answer is no. Show me. Maybe 6 weeks in, I'm like Chris Sims, disappointing Texas people everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the case. But seriously, I'm like Chris Sims, and I'm a believer. But you got to show me. There are too many questions about a very important position group, and then 2 guys who I don't know a lot about. That's where I stand. I think you're good enough to be a finalist in the AFC, but do I think it's going to happen? I would have to ignore all of Texans history, and I'm not doing it because Chris Sims said so.
No, I agree with you. I also think that you've mentioned that do you trust DeMeco Ryans, the DeMeco Ryans hires of Caley and Popovich? If I'm connecting the dots and having Devin McCourty there, okay, so Devin McCourty knows this guy because they were in New England at the same time. Okay, these guys, Skarnecchia, he learned under Skarnecchia, so Caley and Popovich are going to be good coaches because of their time in New England. Is there someone on the Texans and the Texans brain trust that spent time, maybe their entire career until they're on the Texans with the New England Patriots?
There is.
Is it a guy who seems like he's a hands-on GM, not saying it's a bad thing, but he seems like he's hands-on with it?
You mean the guy who was alleged before DeMeco Ryans got here to have a headset in and was very involved in play calling?
Wait, they have someone like that?
Yes, they do. They do. He's the guy who told us they're not concerned, so why should you be concerned about the offensive line? Nick Caserio, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a Nick Caserio hire. It's obvious that the 2 guys with tons of ties to New England. I just so far with everything that the Texans do, if they have a New England background, I assume that it's Caserio putting forward this guy as like, hey, we should hire them. If it's a San Francisco background,
like
I'm
Slowick,
assuming
yes.
I'm assuming it's DeMeco Ryans, even like Azeez Al-Shaair, Jimmy Ward, like the guys on the team that played for San Francisco. Like that's the pattern, and that's like the easiest. Like they're not exactly like hiding it very well.
Yeah, so while you are correct, and it's not a out of bounds assumption to assume that Nick Caserio had a lot to do with it, if it goes poorly, it'll fall at least publicly on DeMeco Ryans. I don't know how the Texans internally will take a look at it, and maybe Nick Caserio said, "You get the one. Oh, you want to hire Slowick? That's your dude. Cool. Now that we've determined it doesn't work, now it's my turn." I guess who was responsible for Strasser? Because if that's the DeMeco Ryans thing as well, I don't remember Strasser's connections. I have to look it up.
Yeah, we can just look up
We'll look it up. We'll look it up. But then it would be maybe a situation where Caserio said, "Look, you can handle the defense, but I saw what happened when you had control of hiring offensive coaches, and I'm not even sure he had full control. Could have been a collaborative thing where Caserio was involved there too. But just working off your theory, very well could be where, all right, you got the 2 years with those guys. It did not work out. In fact, Strasser was a disaster. So now it's my turn. And I'm going to hire from within because I know the guy, Popovich, and then I'm going to get a guy who worked under Sean McVay, but also a guy I know from New England. So there's our offensive side of the ball. Nick Caserio is the I in this situation. I'm the one who will make these hires, but you're the one who's going to take all the bullets if it doesn't work out. Because that's kind of how it goes, at least publicly. We will see how it plays out. You mentioned Alshire. We'll have Sean's currently looking up.
I mean,
where Strasser came from.
Chris Strasser, he is now 61 years old. Did not start working in the NFL until 2017 with the Denver Broncos. He was on the Broncos for 2 years as an assistant offensive line coach, and then a title that just says offensive line - tackles coach
With the Broncos.
Yes, with the Broncos, and then 4 years with the Colts as O-line coach, and then Texans.
So there are no at least obvious connections on their face with DeMeco.
No, before that it's Washington, Boise State, Boise State,
football.
Colorado, Boise State.
Now the criticism
guy.
of the hire as we saw things play out was he was coaching in a scheme that he wasn't even that familiar with. So that was something that was laid out there as the Texans O-line was struggling. So I don't know who was a proponent of Chris Strasser.
Yeah,
it was DeMeco's first time hiring an O-line coach. So maybe he got word from someone that this would be a good choice, and it didn't work out, or maybe it was a Caserio thing. But Caserio, considering being a GM and all his connections, you think he would have just hired a guy who knew, and he did, I guess, in Popovich, and he had him waiting in the wings.
His Wikipedia under the Texans is just like a one sentence. Like he was named offensive line coach in February 2023. The Colts one is funny. Strasser was named offensive line coach for the Indianapolis Colts on January 2019. It was later revealed that Colts head coach Frank Reich contacted Strasser out of the blue, as the two did not work together or ever met prior to on the phone call offering Strasser the position. Hey, I'm Frank Reich. Would you like to work in the NFL?
And Strasser's like, matter of fact, I would like to. I'm heading to Indianapolis right now.
I know you love the Mountain West conference, but would you like, and maybe a little bit of Pac-12, would you like the NFL?
Yeah, he had been a West Coast guy. The furthest east he had been is Denver, and then he got a call from Frank Reich.